And here's the one everybody's been waiting on, the Ugly. Before I get all into that, let me say right now, this is going to be the one that pisses a lot of people off. I'll tell you right up front, I really don't care what your opinion is, because this is my opinion. And a bunch of neckbeards that got kicked out of their mama's basement and was forced to go drive a truck, I really don't care what your opinion is, AKA trolls. Oh, there's a lot of them in here, so I don't worry about them too much. And there's also several people that no longer work for Schneider that continue to label them in the hashtag. I mean, if you do a Google search, the #1 return on that, the guy hasn't even worked here for 2 years. So his opinion doesn't matter at all. His experience, he met a woman after he'd been driving about a year and all of a sudden it went bad for him. Maybe the woman was bad for him and not Schneider and his SFI truck. He should have thought about that. There's another one that continues to plug away and hashtag Schneider and Landstar, who has failed at like no less than 5 leases. Just got him a new truck, but he's still making sure he tags it. He hashtags Schneider just to let everybody know he's doing okay. And well, that's enough on that. But one of the really bad things I see about Schneider IC, and you'll hear a lot of the trolls tell you this, and some of the people that aren't trolls, they want you to put it on the glass. Well, I'm telling you right now, I want them to put it on the glass too, because when a Schneider IC driver comes out and tells you he can't afford to move his truck because he's diamond status in his recruitment bonuses and he's making good money, you have to be kind of suspect of how much money he's actually making driving the truck. And for someone to tell you they're making $2 a mile and only drove 90,000 miles last year, please put it on the glass. You don't have to show your 1099. Just show that proprietary breakdown in the Schneider website that shows the recruitment bonuses and how you got to that $2 a mile. That's all I'm asking. There's some really ugly recruiting going on the Schneider IC side, and that's bad, because you're misleading these people who have no clue how to operate a truck or a business for that matter. And that's one of the ugly things I hate about this. That's why I've stayed off of YouTube for so long. I watch, but I didn't participate. Spoke with a few of you. I got quickly labeled as a troll when I call you out on your shit. Yeah, excuse the language, I used it. But let's get on into Schneider IC and the bad. If you're coming over to Schneider and Schneider IC with an SFI truck or any truck, and you think you're going to do east-west turnarounds, that's not going to happen. Nah, you can get a load going west. There are 4 or 5 strategic spots you've got to be sitting in order to snag one of those loads. And those guys from the west, they watch those areas very close. I know, because I did. And you can make money out on the West Coast too, but it's not that great, and it's really sucking now, because I used to run out of the West. Freight coming out of Seattle at the time was $1.48 a mile. Yeah, with that high price fuel, Schneider was paying $1.48 a mile. It's down to $1.28 now. Yes, I've had a look at it. It's $1.28 coming out of Seattle going down to Phoenix. But that said, you can get some good freight going back up there, you know, paying $2 a mile, $1.75. And if you know the lanes, you can actually make money out there. It's there to be made for a person that knows what they're doing. And especially if you got a low truck payment or, you know, a paid for truck. I wouldn't advise it for an IC driver with an SFI truck right now. You'll survive, but you're going to be competing with the guys that have been out there for years. And if you're from California or Washington, you're not going to get an SFI truck. You're going to have to, well, if you want to come over to Schneider with a lease truck, you know, lease onto Schneider, you're going to have to move out of the state. And let's talk about those boxes that Schneider has. Everybody has the same boxes, pretty much. The Midwest is where you want to be if you want to maximize your profit. Well, if you live 500 miles away from the Midwest, you may or may not get a good paying load up there. And From where I lived, I was always consistently getting loads that paid $1.90 plus a mile leaving the house. Now, getting back to the house, that was a game until itself. I never, ever got home making more than $1 a dime a mile to the truck. There were only 2 or 3 strategic places that I had to place myself to even grab a load that paid $1.50 or more. And generally, by the time I got done with a deadhead, I couldn't do it at all. I mean, it still worked out to $1 a dime. You have to be sitting in specific areas to get those freight, and that was the highest I ever saw was $1.58. And by the time I got done with the deadhead, I was still making about $1 a dime or less a mile deadheading home, because I dropped the load and I always had to deadhead home. Minimum was 30 miles. Most of the time it was 70 or 80 miles, and sometimes up to 100 miles just to get home. And, you know, you don't get paid for deadheading. And there's always that issue with that trailer. You always had to go spot that trailer, and they always eat up a lot of your time doing that and your fuel. You know, sure, you got paid for it, 25 bucks, 50 bucks, depending on where you had to go take it to. But let's be real. That's not a profitable way to run a business for any damn body unless you're the one pulling the strings. And let's move right on into that fuel discount. Well, yeah, I wrongly assumed, well, no, I didn't, that the fuel discount was good. However, I've got background in fuel discounts, and Watkins & Shepard was a division of Schneider. But before Schneider bought them out, Watkins & Shepard was getting upwards of 50 to 60 cents per gallon discount at Flying J and Pilot. What are you seeing at Schneider now? 30, 32 cents. That's a joke either way, because I mean, I've moved on from that and I'm over with another company now, and I'm getting upwards of 50 to 55 cents. I've even seen 96 cents a gallon discount. So yeah, I guess that's part of that contract where they're allowed to make a profit off of you. So that's something to keep in mind. I want to take the time to back up for a moment and talk about the internet trolls that run around YouTube. Of course, a lot of them's going to come in here and probably post, well, why don't you let us see who you are, or whatever like that. You know, it's just like, well, it's not a good post if we can't see who you are. Well, I'm going to tell you neckbeards a thing or two. I've been on the internet longer than a lot of you have been potty trained. And I learned a long time ago, if you want to keep people out of your business, you keep your life private. You don't show them where you live. You don't show them your car. You don't show them your face. Because, well, as you know, and a lot of you have seen, you can get swatted doing that. Don't like my opinions? Don't like what I have to say? Don't watch the videos. Hey, how about that? And moving right along, let's talk about the micromanagement. I never really considered Schneider to be micromanaging until I got the new truck with the new sensitive critical event module in it. For somebody to call me up and when I'm sitting at a red light, well, after I've moved from the red light, I'm sitting at a red light turning into a customer's driveway and hit a pothole, and then someone calls me up and tells me I need to make sure I've got both hands firmly on the steering wheel so that won't happen. That's just a little bit over the top. I don't get those anymore because I don't have Schneider's Qualcomm in my truck anymore, and it's my Qualcomm. And you can bet I didn't enable the critical events on it, because I know how to drive a truck. I've been doing it for almost 30 years. And, you know, if you want to be handled that way, that's fine. Oh, and another thing, my cruise works when my windshield wipers are on. And let's talk about the load board for a little bit. A lot of drivers out here like to say, well, you're competing with company drivers. And I can tell you straight up, no. You are never competing with a company driver at Schneider, not ever. There will be an occasional time that Schneider may reach in and take your load away from you to give to a company driver, but generally that is an emergency situation, and I would hope that they would be that understanding toward the owner-operator as well in case he had a family emergency or something. But They're not going to be. If you're under a load, you're going to pay that fee to relay that load. And that's another bad, well, I call it an ugly thing. I don't pay relay fees now. If my truck breaks down, I get paid for what I covered. Somebody comes get it, and they get the rest of the money out of it. Now let's cover some of the hype that's pumped up by some of the IC drivers. I go where I want, when I want to. No, you don't. That's another rumor, myth, a lie, whatever you want to call it, but that's what it is. It's a lie. You go wherever your bank account tells you to do, and you stay out as long as your bank account tells you to. Because I will tell you that I go where I want, when I want, and that holds true every day. My last trip with Schneider was December the 20th. I didn't even put a load on my truck till February the 4th. So don't sit there and tell me you go where you want, when you want, but you're always driving, because you're always putting videos out every week talking about how great it is to be an owner-operator with Schneider. Bullshit. Now let's talk about load planning with Schneider. I may no longer be with Schneider, but I know for a fact that this still holds true. You book a load, that's your load, and you're going to pick it up. It doesn't matter how far you are from it. Now, since I've left Schneider, my first load with my new company was a load going home. There was only one issue with that. It didn't pick up for 5 days, and I was 1,000 miles away from it. Now, Schneider will let you insert a load to make up for lost revenue, a canceled load, or something like that. But you can't simply reach out a week, book a load, and then work your way, start inserting loads to get you there. You book that load, you're going to get that load. They may allow you to insert one load in if they feel sorry for you, but otherwise, no, you can't work like that. You have to book the loads. Like if you're trying to get home from, say, Jacksonville, Florida to St. Louis, Missouri, and you see a load in North Carolina that doesn't pick up for 3 or 4 days, and it's going straight to your house. Well, you can book that load, but you're going to go get that load. You're not going to sit there and work back and forth until you get up to North Carolina and then get that load. You're not going to be inserting 2, 3 loads to get yourself up there. You got to have those loads planned out in sequence. Now let's talk about SFI in general. I've always had good communication between me and my SFI rep. I'll reach out to him and ask him questions, and occasionally he'll call me and ask me questions. So it's kind of a back and forth. Now, we didn't start off on that. Before I got my truck, we butted heads several times. But once he realized that I was serious and I knew what I was doing, things smoothed out, and we've been great ever since. And I like to consider him a friend. So that's a good point, actually. Now, let me give you the bad point about your SFI lease or your truck if you're considering this. That's your truck. You're leasing it from SFI. You do what you want to do with it. You're not going to get, if there's a recall on your truck, you're not going to get an email from SFI, hey, there's a recall on your truck. You're an owner-operator now, or a lease operator, whatever you want to be calling yourself. You have to stay up to date on that. You have to check for recalls and stuff like that. There's one SFI driver that missed a recall, and I'm sure they may have told him about it or may not have told him about it once his truck stayed in the shop for a week, replacing the back part of his cab because blown shocks, ripped out brackets, and everything like that. Well, the recall wasn't on the shocks or the brackets. The recall was on the ride leveler. Now, my truck had the same recall. Of course, I didn't catch this until his truck went into the shop, and I hadn't had my truck as long as he had, so I didn't do the damage to my truck, and they replaced the ride leveler on it, so I shouldn't have the issue. The moral to that story is check your recalls regularly, because SFI isn't going to reach out to you unless somebody tells you. You're not going to know. You're an owner-operator now, a lease operator, whatever you want to call yourself. You are responsible for staying on top of your equipment. And that's the end of the story, and that's all I've got today.